This content is being brought to you by the Bourbon Real Talk American Whiskey Aroma Kit. This is a tool that I put together to help all you whiskey aficionados out there develop your palates. You can sit down with the vials and train your senses, or you can sit down with a great dram and break that whiskey down to its components. If you have any interest of purchasing a kit of your own, head on over to bourbonrealtalk.com/shop and pick one up. Thank you for listening. Hello, everyone out there in Bourbon Real Talk land. Randy Sullivan here with, as always, a very special guest. We have Travis Whitmeyer in the house. Actually, we are in Travis Whitmeyer's house.
Yeah.
That's fair, right?
Sure.
Because this is, we're at your distillery.
Yeah. Welcome to the man cave.
Man cave, yes. And so took a little quick trip down here to Houston so that I could do this podcast. We got a little bit of a party going on tonight. We're going to have some people out. Food truck just got here. Super excited about all of that. But I wanted to come down here and find out what you got going on at Whitmeyer's Distillery, because not only do you have some pretty badass whiskey.
Thank you.
But you also do some pretty badass things for veterans and so on and so forth. So I thought it'd be fun for us to talk about all of that.
Sure.
So first off, what are you drinking?
So this is actually this kind of bourbon rye hybrid that we put together. You know, there's not a lot of bourbon and rye that's been put together, even though they generally go together really well.
Oh shit!
Already, huh?
Already, yeah.
So,
okay.
That's not that one. So yeah, it's essentially just it's three different whiskeys. It's some of our bourbon. It's 16 to 18 months old.
Mm-hmm.
Then we also have some of our blue label single barrel bourbon that we mix in with that, and that's a Kentucky distillate that we age here.
Okay.
And so it's got a little bit of age on it when we bring it in, but it's 5 to 6 years old.
Okay.
And then we also have some of this. We bought a bunch of barrels of MGP rye that was 4 and 5 years old. You know, I know the jury's kind of out on MGP rye, but it seems more than not, it's kind of it's a thing, and I enjoy it.
I don't know what jury's out on MGP rye. I think it's amazing. So
yeah,
I mean, some of the younger stuff, I think, and I've learned this recently, that when you're distilling, you make your cuts different depending on how long you're planning on aging that product. And I get that, you know, maybe you might be getting an MGP rye that was meant for longer age and we're drinking it young. So maybe the, you know, esters aren't quite right or whatever. But I mean, I still think it tastes great. So the question then becomes quality price ratio, right? So, but the stuff that I've seen that you've released has been very well received in the market and the price has been reasonable. So.
And, you know, we do a little bit of everything. We certainly distill our own, but our permit allows us to do all sorts of things with spirits. And I don't want to limit us by saying I'm never going to do this or I'm never going to do that.
Absolutely.
It's really just more of a focus on quality. And yeah, I mean, Houston's our home, and we've got a little bit here and there between, you know, the other markets in Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio. But by and large, it's, you know, we're very much Houston
focus.
You know, and that was an approach that we've been after for a long time, as opposed to just going out there and you know, casting a big net, see how wide we could get it. You know, and just kind of, instead of casting a net, more like just driving a spike, right? You know, and
this is home based. Boom.
Yeah. And then, you know, organically just kind of spread it out as it goes, and it seemed to work so far.
That's awesome. So I actually am drinking a whiskey that's not featured on the table. It's a blue label single barrel. And was this distillery only by chance?
No, you can. That's a retail release. You can get that.
Oh, okay.
You know, specs and lots of independents around town. And
so I'm detecting a fair bit of cinnamon in the two whiskeys that I had, especially is this 5? Number 5, I got cinnamon red hots, like lots of cinnamon, especially on the finish, which I actually enjoy that in any Texas whiskey that has it. I get it in, you know, Iron Root. I get it on some of the Balcones releases, and I just think it's beautiful and I like it. Which, in the whiskey that you're drinking, what would your tasting notes on that be?
So it's gonna vary slightly from batch to batch. We do individual batches, and we also do single barrels.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's really well balanced. That, you know, it might, the combining bourbon and rye, you always get those people. I'm not a rye drinker, or I am a rye drinker. I don't like bourbon.
Right.
It's, and I've done, very recently I was involved in a blind tasting, and
is it this one that you're drinking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to kill this and drink it with you.
And I was, picking out, oh, that's definitely a rye. And some of the ryes I got right. But some of the ryes I picked for bourbons. The bourbons I picked for ryes. One wheated bourbon I picked to be a rye. Really? And I like to think, I've got a pretty fair palate. I've been doing this for
a little bit.
All told, probably 15 years into it, pretty heavily. So,
right.
Yeah, and then looking at the market, there's not. I think High West has a thing that they release.
They have a Burr Rye, yeah.
Yep. And then Wild Turkey has a thing, Forgiven.
Forgiven, yeah.
And aside from that, I don't know where you have too many distilleries that are blending bourbons and ryes together. And I think that's kind of a cool thing that's, largely unexplored in the mainstream. To be able to just put straight whiskeys or really well-aged whiskeys together.
Yeah. Yeah, that clove and nutmeg from the rye's coming through. I would have guessed this was a rye, I think. But it is a little bit softer. So it's delish. I like it quite a bit.
Thank you.
So I'm going to tell you a story. This is not the first time we've met.
Yeah.
So I've told this story to a few people. I'm just curious. Have you heard the story about me? Has anyone told you the story that I tell about running into you at the German restaurant? Has anyone told you that story?
No.
Okay. All right.
But that was okay.
Yeah. So here's what happened, people. So I walk into Garrison Brothers because I'm interviewing Donis Todd, and I'm standing in there, and the woman who has the walkie-talkie to tell people what's going on says, we have 2 VIPs in the visitor center. First off, I was shocked that someone called me a VIP because I may do a podcast, but I'm just a jackass. And secondly, I'm like, who's the other VIP? What's going on? And she says, Travis Whitmeyer. I'm like, oh, shit. And so I look up. There's Travis. He comes up to say hi. And I realize that was not the first time that I met Travis.
Yeah.
Right? So the backstory that you have not heard is that my wife is kind of hot, okay? And so the night before, we were staying at a winery, and there was by the way, if you hear noise in the background, this is like a working facility. People are walking in, so sorry about that. Yeah. But anyways, so the night before, we're staying at a winery, and they close, and this couple buys a bottle of wine. We go out back. We're having drinks with them. And I tell him that I have a whiskey podcast. And he's like, oh, I like whiskey. And my cottage is just like 100 feet away. So I'm like, oh, I have whiskey in the cottage. And he's like, oh, go get it. So I go get some whiskey. We sit down. We're having drinks. Now, I know how to pace myself with whiskey. But some people who don't drink whiskey all the time don't know how to pace themselves. Plus, he'd been having wine. So this dude proceeds to drink and drink and drink. Plus, he's drinking wine with the whiskey, and he gets drunk and loses his filter and starts telling me how beautiful my wife is. Now, his wife and my wife are sitting there talking, and he and I are talking. But like 3 or 4 times, he's like, bro, like your wife is like really. And so I'm looking at him, and I'm like, motherfucker, like seriously, bro, like. And so I was a little bit sensitive, just a wee bit, right? And so we get in the car, we go to dinner. Everyone kept telling us to go to the German restaurant. We end up sitting outside, and it's like this gravel path with some concrete strips, and there's tables in the gravel and on the concrete. And my wife is wearing like these wedges. So, and she, in all fairness, she'd been drinking a little bit. So when she goes to walk from the uneven surface onto the gravel, she stumbles a little bit. And there's a table of 3 guys sitting behind us. And one guy says, excuse me, miss, be careful. Or something to that effect, right? Right after this dude like just was basically professing his love for my wife to me, right? And so I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, what'd that dude say to you? And she's like, He just told me to be careful. I was like, he doesn't need to be telling you to be careful when your husband is right here. Your husband can tell you whether or not you need to be careful. And that was Travis. And so the next day,
He's trying to be a nice guy,
right? But it wasn't your fault. I was just being sensitive. And so this is like the funniest way that that I could meet somebody, because the next day I run into you at Garrison Brothers, and I'm like, oh shit, that was that guy that was like worried about you almost falling down. And I thought I was being sensitive about it, and it turned out to be somebody I like totally admire and want to meet. And I'm probably going to go down to his distillery one day, and here we are. So cheers to that.
Yeah.
And so that's my story of me meeting Travis Whitmeyer, and I've told that to a handful of people. I'm glad no one told it to you before I could. So anyway, so moving on. So you own a distillery. That's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
And we're going to get more into that. But I'm just curious because I meet a lot of people that they grew up in a household that they're kind of teetotalers.
Okay.
And so do you remember your first drink?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell the story? You don't have to if you can.
Yeah. I was on a mission trip with my church over the summer. We'd gone to New Mexico to help rebuild some Habitat for Humanity on an Indian reservation.
Okay, gotcha.
I was probably 14 years old. And, a bunch of us are hanging out in the hotel room, and one of the older guys in the group says, hey, let's go get some beer, and end up with getting a homeless guy to go buy us a couple cases of Budweiser, and we just sat there. I couldn't even drink it. And then shortly thereafter, there was probably at least 6 months that went on after that. I didn't have anything else, but I got into that Goldschlager, and oh my God, yeah, terrible stuff.
Yeah, that makes you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
And it'll give you diabetes. It's pretty sweet. That is actually, because I asked this question of a lot of people, that's the best answer, right? That you were on a mission trip and got a couple of cases of beer to, wind down at the end of the day.
Why not?
Why not? Of course. That totally makes sense.
Kids do kid things.
Kids do kid things. Plus, Jesus drank wine, so I'm sure it's cool. And so in your household, was drinking responsibly, was that something that was represented, or were they kind of like, no, alcohol's bad?
Well, so I came, my parents split up when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
It's myself and my brother, and my brother was really younger than I was at the time. So, on one side of the family, we had a pretty, staunch kind of Southern Baptist, attitude, and not really big drinkers. And then, but my dad was a Navy guy, and so he was a little more relaxed with it, but certainly not, on the other side of the family where it's, the kind of an Episcopalian background where, hey, drinking's cool, it's fine, drink a lot.
Yeah, because I interviewed, and I think it drops tomorrow, but I interviewed Ty Phelps, and his dad's still a Baptist minister, right? So it's like, it's just fascinating to me, the number of people that they're like, yeah, my house was a teetotaler household, and I'm like, now I own the distillery. So one of the things that that fascinates me about you and your distillery is you've got a big commitment to veterans. Is that because you did serve in the military, correct?
We are 100% veteran owned and operated. So myself, my brother, my dad, got a few investors that are veterans. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's near and dear to us. We'll be 8 years in April, and really since day one, it never fails. Every week, somebody's hitting us up. Hey, would you donate to this, donate to that, donate to this, donate to that? And it's really time consuming, and we don't have a whole lot to donate. I mean, we see what we are here.
Right.
So, really we just wanted to focus and do something positive, something good. And we started down the road of doing our own veteran nonprofit. Found out that was, you think starting a distillery is hard.
501c3's Yeah.
So yeah, I totally abandoned that idea. But then again, we've heard a lot of really great stories about Camp Hope that's local here to Houston. Actually, they're not too far from where we're sitting right now, and they're every day they're taking in these veterans and now their family members, and they're really making differences, saving people's lives, and it's just really a really great outfit. So we've kind of gone to where we're just anything that we can do, it kind of goes in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody else, we just have to be like, Andre the Giant, everybody move.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. We've picked our path. This is who we're going to support.
Yeah.
Right. So you all donate a $1 per bottle or something like that, or
it kind of kicked off. I was, I don't know if you saw the post, and I think it was the Bourbon Society, but I was just drinking one night. And, that's normal.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I may have been watching like a war movie or something, but something ticked off, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to donate this month's sales to Camp Hope. And I put it out there and didn't really think too much of it until like the next morning. And I'm like, what have you done? But it was fun. And so we donated, I think that was the month of May or June, that we donated everything that we made on site.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just profit. I mean, every dollar that we generated on site, we donated to Camp Hope. And then took it further and said, okay, well, not only this, going forward, $1 out of every bottle that we sell, we're going to give to Camp Hope. So
okay, that's amazing. So what branch did you serve in?
Army.
And what was your job in the Army?
So my brother and I joined together on the buddy program, which it basically meant you bring a friend with you, and you get a little extra bonus, maybe a few incentives, and so we joined up. This was right after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I had taken about a year of college and just goofed off. I think I had maybe signed up for, almost 30 hours, and I ended up with 6 and a whole bunch of W's. So it was like, all right, well, this didn't work. And of course, the parents are like, well, what are you doing? Well, and my dad and grandparents, everybody had served all the way back to probably the founding of the country. And so, having a conversation with my dad, he's like, well, all else fails, do this. It's a good thing to do.
Right.
And
structure, discipline.
Yeah. Direction. And it was a great decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so, signed up in July of 2002 and got out in August 2005. Signed up for 3 years and did it. And it was crazy. A lot of good times, a lot of hard times, but wouldn't change a thing about it.
And so what was your, because I know there's a lot of different jobs in the military. What did you do?
So we signed up to be field artillery.
Okay.
All right.
That's gangster.
And we got to choose our first duty station. We were stationed in Germany, the 1st Infantry Division. And I kind of tie into getting into all this is where I kind of got into the whole alcohol thing. I was learning to be a pretty good lush at the time. You go to the military, you're young, you're full of energy, you're in Germany and Europe. And so, we drank a lot.
Right.
But I also had a girlfriend over there, and her family had been making alcohol for generations. They lived on a farm, and I spent, we didn't have money to fly home. It's not like they just pay your, come home for Christmas or, so we had a lot of 4-day weekends being combat arms, and I'd just go hang out with them. And as opposed to just sitting on base in the barracks, I'd go over there, they'd feed me, and, it was great. So, but her grandfather had made schnapps and wines and beers and all sorts of things. I just thought it was really cool. And we'd sneak down at night into a cellar and snag a bottle of this or snag a bottle of that. And some of these bottles might have been 100 years old.
Wow.
I mean, it was really cool.
Now you know what you were doing.
Yeah.
Back then you were just like, we're drinking.
Right. I mean, who knows? So back to my job, being field artillery. When we deployed to Iraq, my brother and I both deployed to Iraq for 13 months. And at the time we deployed, so this was February 2003. So we were the second wave, OIF2. And we just didn't need field artillery as much, but we needed a lot of boots on the ground. So they cannibalized our field artillery battalion. We kept one battery. For the military people know what I'm talking about. We kept one of the batteries from our battalion to remain artillery. Everybody else got cannibalized and kicked over into an infantry unit. And we got a crash course, trained with, just some pretty. I mean, it wasn't formal infantry training, but we hung out with some pretty crazy guys,
right?
And so it was almost like having a dual MOS of really, when it came time to make money, we were kicking indoors and snatching fools up in the middle of the night doing crazy shit. And
damn. So my
brother got to stay artillery.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
but we were deployed about 30 miles apart.
So a lot of I've mentioned this before, but my brother was airborne infantry in the Army, but he actually never got deployed. But there was a base in Fort Polk, Louisiana,
sure,
where all of the people went to before they got deployed to Iraq, and it was actually an Iraqi city. They had brought in Iraqis to like run a town. There was
like a mock-up.
Yeah, mock-up. There's
sure,
like a bakery and stuff, and his job was to play the role of a terrorist trying to kill American soldiers, and the American soldiers' job was to hunt him down. So they had dogs, they had Apache helicopters with infrared and all that stuff, and the guns would make noise, but they were just shooting lasers, right? But they wore the little units and all that stuff, and somehow he developed PTSD. And when he got out, and he did injure himself in jump school and all that stuff, and he was on pain meds, and he got seriously addicted to pain medication, became an alcoholic, mixing the two to try and deal with the pain, and he took his life in 2014. So for that reason, I have a real heart for veterans, and we have used our influence in the whiskey club that I'm an admin in. Someone say whiskey. We worked with Iron Root Distillery and the Licorice family, and we got together with an organization up there that provides equine therapy for disabled veterans and children, and we ended up raising $40,000 plus cash for that organization, and then a donation of about $20,000 worth of labor to build a cover over their riding arena so that they don't have to cancel services because of inclement weather. So this podcast is a big supporter of veterans and making sure that they have the care that they need when they get home, because as a civilian, we don't always understand what they went through when they were, serving their country. So just to put that out there. So part of my mission is to get the word out about, what people go through while they're doing that service. Do you feel comfortable sharing a story of a time that was really scary for you when you were serving?
Oh, the entire 13 months I was in Iraq was scary. I was scared shitless. Fuck a bunch of that, dude.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't really pinpoint any one particular time. The whole shit.
The whole thing was just terrible from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Well, I know that when you're over there, you form bonds and brotherhoods with the people that you're serving with.
There's a lot of reality to that. I'll tell you. So my first sergeant, the first sergeant of my unit, my battery turn company, is now this very day the sergeant major of the United States Army.
No shit.
Look him up. He's fucking like the 16th sergeant major of the United States Army.
Wow.
That was my first sergeant.
Oh,
and we all knew it back then. It was like, all right, this dude, he's
gone places.
Yeah, it's like then, yeah. So he wants to drag us through all this tip of the spear crazy shit. And yeah, well, he damn well better be sergeant major of the Army, but he is. And it's very humbling.
Yeah. So do you have a memory of serving where you and your, brother, something really funny happened or something?
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, lots of those, especially in Germany.
Can you pick one that's just sticks out?
Oh man, what am I going to say that won't get me in trouble?
Don't rat anybody out.
Yeah. There's really a whole lot of those. I kind of wish he was here to tell the story.
Tell the story for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, shit, we're 3 years apart. We're in Europe, Germany particularly. We might make a trip up to Amsterdam. Prostitution's legal all over. Well, Germany and up there.
I like where the story's going.
Yeah, but we didn't. This one particular time that I'm thinking about, we had nothing to do with prostitutes.
Okay, all right.
We were just at some nightclub, and it's all the disco. At least that time, everybody was disco, and him and I and a couple of other buddies. I think there were 5 of us that piled into this beater of a BMW. Like you hear BMW, like that's a nice thing here in the States, but everything over there is BMW.
Right, yeah.
Or Volkswagen or Mercedes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, so we piled into this piece of shit car.
Right.
And drove 4 hours at 120 miles an hour.
Right.
Half drunk with boxes of wine to Amsterdam. and we end up at this nightclub, and my brother's he's had enough. He's like, I can look over and see him at the bar, and he's like this.
Yeah, right.
His head's down, and I'm like, all right, well, he's done. A couple of other my buddies, they're hanging out doing their own things, and just out of the blue, this beautiful, like, I mean, a 10, like European.
10.
Yeah. Just walks up and she's just doing this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all right, what? She just as plain as day. Would you like to make sex? Wait, what?
Wait.
Is this a real
question?
This is
your opening salvo?
I'm being punked, like come on now. And she's like, nope. I just need somebody for my friend. And she points, and I look over. Oh, this poor woman. So yeah, I won't go too hard on that. Anyway, yeah, I can find somebody for your friend. And my brother is sitting over there.
Right, he's drunk, right?
He's like, yeah,
yeah, here. He'll do it.
Yeah, you see that guy over there? Yeah, done. So we go back and we're sharing this room. It's like 2 little tiny twin beds. It's horrible. It's an awful room. You wouldn't stay there.
Right.
And but we did.
Yeah,
it was great.
I wasn't ready.
So, anyway, we make it back, and I don't want to get too graphic with it. I really don't.
We can skip the
you
graphic
can kind of use your imagination where it goes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So your brother got conscripted.
Yeah, well
to take one for the team.
To this day, we have those conversations, and it's a legendary thing. And we were talking about bonds earlier.
Right. In the Whitmeyer household. Yeah, that's awesome. So you did not marry the beautiful European girl. You are married though, right?
I am.
Have family.
I'm happily married. I've got a beautiful wife, 2 beautiful sons, and just found out we're going to have 1 more son.
You heard it here first, people.
I'll have 3 boys running around.
Gotcha.
That's enough.
Yeah,
That's enough.
You're only shooting one kind of bullet. Yeah, just the boys. I got 1 of each, and then I retired from the game. Yeah. So, but once you get to 3 of the same, it's like, okay.
She really wanted a girl, and I was happy with 2. 2's a lot. 1's a lot. But she wanted to try for the girl, and didn't happen. And of course, she's not upset about it.
Oh no,
we gave it the old college try. That's enough.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're done.
That's awesome. So having a family, that's a lot of responsibility for a man. But here you are engaging in this super risky endeavor of making your living as a spirits producer.
Yeah, well, it's not risky. Everything's risky.
Fair enough. So what was your path from the military to becoming a distiller?
So I got out of the military August 2005 and used a GI Bill. Went to college, but GI Bill wasn't really paying enough to like support yourself. So I got some student loans. I worked, and I had a little help from family to get through college. But I worked full time. And we actually, our family has, extended family has a shipping container business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of like Connex boxes, shipping containers, we would actually take and refurbish, these boxes that weren't necessarily seaworthy anymore, and we would turn them into like construction site storage. You see them all over the place.
Sure. Yeah.
So we would rent these things or
I've seen
sell
them at
these
some
things or
distilleries
build
in
them out.
Texas.
And sure, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and I never went that route.
Right.
So yeah, we were involved in that, and I started our Houston location, which now is a big thing here in Houston. Safety Box is the name of the company, and you probably see them all over.
Sure.
We're all over Texas, and but that's kind of a side gig, and that's kind of what outside of just going to school, I had a little leniency with kicking this operation off. At the same time, I worked for pennies, because I didn't need a whole lot, but I was passionate about it.
Right.
Anyway, it was a great education. And one of my first business classes, I had to write a business plan. I wrote a business plan for a distillery. I went to the University of Houston.
Okay.
And I goofed around in my kitchen, in my garage, and one thing led to another, and friends and family would say, "Hey, man, you might be onto something if you actually did this." And got to looking around, and there just wasn't anybody in this area doing it. Well, there wasn't anybody doing it. Tito was doing it.
Right.
When I was really thinking about this, but
not in Houston.
Right. And then so Balcones and Garrison kicked off, and I'm like, well, shit, if they're gonna do it, I'm fucking in Houston. So I'm going to do it too.
Right.
So here we are, Harris County's first legal distillery.
Nice.
So, founded April 2012, and it's been a great ride so far.
Never look back.
Lots of ups and downs, and always looking back. Always looking back. Yeah, it's it's feast or famine. It's you alluded to this. If you've interviewed distillers, and I got to believe they're the same mindset. You don't go into this unless you're just so, corporate, and you really come from that background of, okay, well, I've got, 30 years of experience. I've worked with a distributor. I worked for these other brands. But if you're just, trying to create a product from the ground up, and really, because when we started, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I'd argue we still don't know what the hell we're doing. And I'd argue most Texans don't know what the hell we're doing. Yeah. I mean, but we're knocking it out. We're knocking it out, and it's been great to see. 5 years ago, Texas had a really, really bad rap in the national scene. When it came to Texas whiskey, it's just and craft whiskey as well. I think we've all seen a shift inside of that 5 years where, okay, well, that's not necessarily the case. No, of course you're still going to see those holdouts that, only whiskey made in America comes from Kentucky or Tennessee.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. But I think that argument is dwindling.
Sure.
And but the rate at which it's dwindling has dropped.
Right.
Consistently over the last. So, and I don't necessarily mean that just Texas. There are whiskey producing regions all over the country. Bourbon, it can be made anywhere.
Yeah. Well, in the United States. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that, I didn't drink Texas whiskey until I went up to Iron Root to do a barrel pick for a retailer. And I started to realize, like, well, it doesn't taste like Kentucky whiskey. But then I found out it wasn't supposed to. It's supposed to have its own flair. And, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The producers in Texas, like, there wasn't a playbook for them to follow. You have to write your own playbook because, Texas is a big place, and there's, I think, 5 different climate regions in Texas or something like that. And every one is going to have its own, like, issues that they have to deal with, things like that. So, it opened my eyes to the reality. And I'm not saying that Texas whiskey is the only way, and sometimes people get that impression of me. I bought a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle today. I got lucky enough. I want to, it's not like I don't drink Kentucky bourbon, right? It's, but I can appreciate everything.
Are you going to be opening that for the bottle share?
Not for the bottle share, but I'll give you some.
But you will open it.
I will. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You're stronger than I am.
No, I don't give a shit. Whiskey's meant to be drank. And, plus, if a retailer blesses me with the opportunity to buy a bottle, it has huge secondary value. I feel like I should show the respect to open it up. So, and I try not to post pictures of bottles that are not open yet, because I want to show people, like, this is just brown water, people. It's not a profit source. You're not going to be able to make your living off of flipping bottles. So when you get a good bottle, just open it up and share it with your friends. That's what it's for, right? So we can open it when we get done recording if you want to try some. It's Pappy 20. So, but moving on. So this is not the most friendly regulatory environment for spirits producers in the state of Texas. And the 3/4 tier system is completely broken. So what possessed you to take that risk? Were you married at the time that you started the distillery? Like, because as a husband, like, anytime I think about doing some really risky shit, I'm
full disclosure. We've talked about kind of the period of when I was in the Army and that, and so my current wife and all of my children, we've been together 5 years. Okay. I was married twice before.
Gotcha.
So this is my third marriage. Twice before with no children, but both of those two happened after my deployment, and I was home and in school, and well before kids.
Right.
So yeah, my second wife was involved in the early conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, my first wife was involved in the conversation. Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a scary thing to start a distillery in Texas. I mean, you could make the best product in the world, and you have no ability to sell it to your inline consumer. You still have to convince a distributor. You still have to convince a retailer. The distributor is supposed to convince a retailer for you, but they don't really do that when you're small. So I mean, you struck out to do something that was kind of scary.
Well, it had been only done for a couple of years. I mean, literally a couple of years in Texas. Certainly not in this region. I'll definitely give a shout out to Kelly Raylene. She was the first in this Gulf Coast region. So certainly before me, if you guys know Raylene's rum, which I think she's just kind of also U of H, just kind of, and political science, I believe. Which was, anyway, at the time, I'll give you a story. We were applying for our permits and trying to get permitted here in Harris County. And one of the state packet items is the county clerk has to sign off on your distillery being in a wet area of the county that it's going to be located in. So, and there's a whole list of these. I mean, it's a paperwork nightmare. So, and there were no attorneys really in Texas. You couldn't hire an attorney to figure this shit out.
Right.
It was like, we just did this.
Right. Yeah. You just figuring shit out as you go.
Okay. They say we can do it. There's a way to do it.
Right.
So, so we go down to the county clerk's office. And with the packet, and it was a whole bunch of this traveling around all these various entities and getting their signature and stamp saying it's okay to do this. And county clerk stop and we say, okay, this is what we want to do, and we present the packet to the county clerk's office. And you want to do what? You want to open a liquor store?
Nope.
No, ma'am. You want to open a bar? No, ma'am. We want to open a distillery. We actually want to make it. Is that legal? Harris County.
Right, yeah.
This is huge.
Right, you would assume they know.
Figure this shit out.
They don't.
So yeah, she kind of like rubs her pen in her hair and like, let me go talk. And she goes back and a couple minutes pass and comes back out and like, okay, all right, you're good to go.
Really?
Signs it off.
Nice.
All right, nice. So we got that stamp. Yeah, it was a crazy thing to do. It's still a crazy thing to do.
It sure is.
It's
So you are sourcing some whiskey. You make some of your own whiskey. do you have any techniques that you use to try and make your spirit special that you feel like are maybe not common for the industry without sharing anything proprietary?
Yeah. So, there's been a lot of talk over the years, and a lot of the guys that have come on, guys and gals that have come on um, since I started thinking about it, have really gotten into using Texas grains, and now to this day, I think there are a few malt houses here that I'm intrigued by. I'd like to toy around with that, but my mentality all along is just keep it simple. You're talking about something that's been done for arguably 3,000 years. The process of distillation itself is not complicated.
Right.
It's just not. And anybody that would tell you it is just
trying to make it sound complicated.
It's not.
Right.
It's illegal. You can't do it without a permit. And you can get yourself into trouble if you try to teach a whole bunch of people.
Right.
It's like bomb making. You don't want to teach people to make bombs or grow marijuana.
Right.
It's highly regulated, so it's kind of taboo. But generally we're not talking about some crazy thing. So my mentality from really day one has always been just kind of keep it simple, and then just kind of focus on using quality stuff. And if you end up with something that's not good, correct it, or don't release it for certain. Don't release it. My God.
Right.
And you'll find the way. I definitely applaud because there are too many to name. I will name a couple. The Iron Roots of the world, the Andalusias of the world, Balcones.
Jared Hempstead has been a huge...
I mean, going through, putting all that creative juice into it, and really, going out on limbs to pull in these different ingredients and different things, and who knows how they're going to turn out. You just put them out there anyway.
Right. Right.
I mean, so that takes guts, and
right.
and sometimes it wins, sometimes it doesn't.
Sure.
That's what it's all about.
And you're gambling, usually millions of dollars, and a lot of times most of the time it's not your money, but you have a passion and you do it.
And that's
So one of the biggest complaints that I hear about Texas distilleries is the pricing of their whiskeys. And, they do generally cost more than what you would pay for, a huge Heaven Hill, well-marketed product, or even a Four Roses or a Buffalo Trace. And so when we get in the pricing conversation, I like to ask distilleries, are you profitable yet?
We're making a little bit of money. We're profitable. Last 3 years, we're doing okay. I mean, we're not, I don't have lake houses and mansions all over the place, but we're making money.
Right.
And I'd hope, at this point in any business, sticking with something this long, hopefully you're making some money.
Most distilleries are not, though, in Texas. So you're one of the exceptions to the rule. All of the really big Texas distilleries are not profitable yet. Garrison Brothers had 1 year. Balcones is still losing money. Iron Root's going to have their first year of profit this year. Andalusia they would be profitable if they didn't have their debt service. So the point being that, yes, the prices might be a little bit higher, but it's not because they're ripping you off for personal gain. It's because when you don't have economics,
you got a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah,
you got a lot of ground to cover.
You got a lot of ground to cover, and that's the main reason why the prices are the way they are. And if you want to have that unique experience that's being handcrafted for you by somebody that's willing to risk their whole life for you and put their family in jeopardy because they have a passion for something, then you got to pay for it. That's the point of that conversation.
Yeah, and I guess I think so. Again, full disclosure, you kind of ran through your list of questions, so I'm just going to jump to one.
Okay.
When you're talking about getting into this and what keeps you up at night and blah 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 across the scale, in general, I would think it's a shared sentiment between any craft distiller and certainly here in Texas that, yeah, it's feast or famine. It's hard to do. And when we started out, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I don't think anybody would argue any of those points. I think some things can happen along the way. And it really boils down to business decisions. One of the things that you talked about or asked me about was, what did your military service do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it taught me to do a whole lot with very little.
Nice.
All right, so we didn't start this with a lot. $150,000. That was our startup capital. We had $150,000 to start this thing up.
By the way, recently I heard an expert say that you should not start a distillery in Kentucky unless you have $25 million.
Yeah. And in Texas, it's, 5 years ago, it was, you should have at least $500,000 to do a craft distillery. We didn't. Today I would not advise anybody to try to start a distillery in the United States with less than $5 million. Anywhere.
Right.
If you don't have $5 million or access to $5 million, and those people aren't too worried about you losing it, I would not take that money and put it in a
IRA
municipal bond or
anything.
Go buy something else.
Right. Yeah.
Don't do this. And it's crazy because you hear these guys, they retire and they've got their life savings and they say, okay, well, I got $200,000 I could throw at this thing right now. I'm like, and we get a lot of that. And, could you advise me on this? I'm like, yeah, I'll advise you to take your money and do something else because, this is anyway.
Yeah. So owning a distillery is fraught with risk, right? And in it, there are.
Well, we make poison. This is something
you make poison.
Something people put in their bodies.
Yeah.
You got to do it really, really right.
You got to do it right. You don't clean the fermenter well enough and boom, you got problems. So, you could have grain that has, fungus in it and you don't detect it until you've aged it for 5 years and you're having to throw away, so much of your capital that you can't survive. You could, there's fire risk. There's all kinds of risks associated. Is there, as a owner of this type of business, is there one thing that keeps you up at night?
As far as keeping me up at night, yeah, it's a roller coaster. Man, it's a roller coaster. There's, the federal government just today. All right, this whole federal excise tax thing.
Tax, yeah.
Anybody's been following along with this? Man, $13.50 per proof gallon. And for silliness in layman's terms, $13.50 a gallon off what we produce, we have to pay it direct to the federal government. That's federal excise tax. Most people don't even realize that.
Right, yeah.
Everybody knows that alcohol's taxed.
Sure.
So that's what we paid. In 2017, we had a big reduction in that on the first 100,000 gallons, which is a godsend.
For craft distilleries especially.
Well, it was for all distilleries on the first 100,000 gallons that were produced.
Yeah.
But certainly to encourage growth in the industry, new entrants in the market, and the ones that have been existing that, we were struggling at that point. When that thing went into place, it was like, I don't know that we're going to be able to sustain this.
Yeah.
That's what we were up against. And it was like, geez, because the tax bills, they just keep piling up and it's due, but we just didn't have the cash flow to pay for it on time. Even though we still paid it, we managed it, but it meant like, okay, my brother and I, to run this company and to take all this risk and to do all these things, it's like, okay, well, we're going to go 3 months and we're not going to take a salary.
Right.
In order to not have to lay anybody off.
Right.
So we did that and we've done that a lot. And so getting that passed in 2017 was a big deal. And that allowed us to add the fermenters out there. Fermenter story was when we met at Garrison Brothers, we were actually up in Fredericksburg to buy out a brewery that had just gone out of business. And we bought those fermenters while we were up there. And just because we were up there close to Dan's place, I messaged Dan. I was like, hey, man, we're going to be close to your place. You mind if I swing through?
Right.
He's like, yeah, I'm up in Washington, D.C. fighting for you. You owe me, you son of a bitch.
Right. Yeah.
Break out the cookers and whores.
Yeah. And that's why Dan wasn't on my podcast and was Donis, because Dan was in Washington fighting for the extra.
That's cool. And it's just, man, whatever it is, it's been really, really cool. It's been really great to be a part of. If I killed over tomorrow, I'd die a happy man.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this is something great. And couldn't say that necessarily 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I'd think, well, yeah, maybe Texas whiskeys or Texas aged spirits maybe in my lifetime would rival that's coming out of Kentucky or Tennessee. But today I'm pretty confident that in my lifetime, we're going to have some things coming out of Texas that are going to turn some heads. Mm-hmm. And not just Texas, it's the whole movement across the country.
Sure.
And
the way it used to be before Prohibition, before the distilleries got conscripted to, make GNS for the war movement and all that stuff. I mean, we don't realize this, but before all of those things happened that interrupted the production of spirits, there was spirits production in a lot of different states, and there was local pride, and that's just now coming back, and we're going to grow that, and that's going to happen, and there's nothing that anyone can do to stop it. And that's why I say get on the right side of history, and let's drink some of this brown water that's not just from Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Outback Steakhouse and get a filet for, $12, or you can go to Vic and Anthony's and pay $60.
They're not the same.
What's the better experience?
Right. They're not the same. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I've done a podcast with Spencer Whelan, Texas Whiskey Trail, Texas Whiskey Association. And whenever I ran into you, we actually talked briefly about the Texas Whiskey Association, and I asked you if you were part of it because I had just started looking into them and all of that stuff. And you said, "Well, no, I don't need to be because I cannot keep up with my own demand. Like every bit of whiskey I can make, it gets sold out. So I'm questioning whether or not it makes sense for me to be a part of this organization." Yeah. And you just recently decided to join the Texas Whiskey Association and make your location a stop on the trail. What convinced you that was a good idea?
So, all right. So, Spencer, look at the people involved. Mm-hmm. So Spencer has come here on a number of occasions, and he's really impressed me with his knowledge and his passion. And, he's doing a great job for Texas. Mm-hmm. And so, he sold me kind of on himself. And then you have, the other side of it. And I'm not talking industry side. I mean, just like consumer side and then you have guys like Wade Woodard. Which Wade, the jury's out on this. Is like you could not be more divided about Wade Woodard. Like either you love him or you hate him.
I'm interviewing him tomorrow.
I have been on both sides of that equation, but I will tell you, Wade is a dear friend of mine, and I agree with 70+% of everything that he pushes, and I genuinely like the guy. I consider him a friend, and he does the compliance thing. He's by the book. And there's a place for that kind of person to be by the book, nail driving hardcore. But what he lacks is the stepping outside the box. Mm-hmm. At least publicly, I think that exists within him. But publicly, I think he's kind of afraid of just what might happen around him. And to be fair, he's been in this. There will be some people here tonight that. In Texas and in the bourbon industry at least from the consumer side, that have been in this thing for a long time, longer than me, mm-hmm. And longer than anybody in Texas, frankly, except for them.
Right.
A couple of names that come to mind: Woodard,
right,
Randy Blank, and the list goes on and on. But it's done me a great service to listen to guys like Wade and Randy and Bart and be involved in the community and not just done me a great service like I'm looking out for something. It's just been a place where I can go to escape all this bullshit and enjoy other individuals' company.
Right. Yeah.
We can talk about something, and maybe you're talking about something as sports. That's fine. You know, I like sports enough, but I don't know that I could sit down in a room and rail on about why this trade deal was bad and this trade deal was good, and
Right.
you know, the fact that Garrett Cole has to shave. I mean, I don't know. You know, you guys can go have that conversation. That's great, but I think there's something happening in the whiskey world today that can potentially rival that. Because I've heard more times than not, you know, this bourbon trading and whiskey trading and spirits trading has just grown up baseball cards.
Absolutely.
Right?
And the biggest guy that I know that does it in North Texas, and he's big even across the whole United States. I asked his wife when I met her, I said, did he trade baseball cards? And she said, yeah, he did. And I was like, I see the same thing.
Boxes of baseball cards.
Right. And I've got some too, but I've not looked up their value, but I have some from when I was a kid.
They're worth nothing.
Yeah, I did not know that. It's super disappointing. So my final question for you is, you know, you're in this facility, you've got the size still that you have, you've got the space that you have for aging product.
2 stills.
Huh?
2 stills.
He does have 2 stills. I saw them.
That's more of a technique.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you do your low wines and your high wines in different stills?
No, they're both kind of hybrid kettle, you know, the kettle column setup. But one, I run 110 proof. The other, I run at 140 proof. And then I just mix it all together, and I run them uniformly. So that's a trade secret, right there.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, that's a great answer to the. Do you have a technique that you use that's a little bit different? That's awesome.
So I just kind of you get to capture everything, and you just put it all together.
Nice. So if you could wave a magic wand, you can have anything in it that you can conceive of. What would the future of Whitmeyer be? Would you sell to Campari? Would you get giant pot stills like balconies? What would the future of Whitmeyer's be?
Yeah, so you know, there's this big, you know, idea that everybody wants to start a distillery and sell it. No, we're still to this day. Show me, you know, going on 8 years now, show me a distillery that's still 100%. I hold half the equity. My brother holds the other half.
Okay.
That's it. And we have no desire whatsoever to sell that equity.
Nice.
Now, that's not to say there isn't a number. There's always a number.
Always a number.
You know, somebody walks in here and says, hey, Whitmeyer Brothers, here's $30 million. Well, I'd be a fool to not take it, especially having 3 sons.
Right, sure.
You know, and you know, these grandkids. So, but at the same time, that's not our aim. That is not our goal. We are not here to get sold out or bought out. We're here to stay. We're here to I don't know, interview our employees. I mean, we're up to 8 employees now, and we're going to keep those 8 employees thanks to today.
Because
we had that excise tax extension. Year, right? I was really, really worried. We had this conversation right Christmas time.
Right.
I hate fucking government. If it pleases the crown, could we please just sell our goddamn whiskey? But we can't. Everything's got to have somebody's fucking paws in it.
Yeah.
Like everything else.
Yeah.
It's like, but most people generally don't care, and they would agree with the sentiment that I can ramble on.
Yeah. So what's the next step for Whitmeyer then?
Well, the next step for Whitmeyer's is we're going to close out 2019. And first quarter of 2020, we are avidly looking for 3 to 5 acres that we can buy, and not lease. Yeah. So we're in right now. We've continuously had to like knock out walls in this complex to add space, and our rent over this time period that we've been here, and we've been here the whole time, has gone up to a point. It's like, why are we paying rent and we aren't just paying a mortgage?
Right? Yeah.
So that's really what we're up against. We're like right now, this very minute, we are buying property anywhere from Tomball to the Woodlands, along Grand Parkway. and we're going to make it a destination. We're going to make it a distillery. Yeah, we're going to do beer too. We're not going to distribute beer, but we're going to do beer. We're going to host weddings. I mean, we're going to throw down. We're going to have food, and it's going to be a place to be.
That's a fucking awesome answer to that question.
So, I mean, we're having a good time, and I have, I don't need much. I'm a simple kind of guy.
Yeah.
My father, I learned best by my father. My father wants to write, and this is a smart man. Navy, graduated with his bachelor's in forestry from SFA, and then got his law degree from University of Houston.
Oh shit.
While my brother and I were in Iraq, he did this. He's like, well, my boys are gone. I'm going to fuck around and get my law degree. And he never practiced law.
Huh.
And he's been our biggest fan. And so, having him in our corner is like,
that's beautiful
and great. And so there's this side of myself and my brother where it's like, man, we just want to show him that same level. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's great. And no, we're not interested in selling out. We're not interested in whoring out the market, and we're not interested in basically any fucking thing that anybody else is doing, because we do our own thing.
Right.
So, while at the same time we'll applaud, all the creativity and the friendships and the coolness of the culture, I don't worry about much today. I worried about a lot in our second and third year of operations. Those were tough. I drank a lot. Being a disabled veteran, dude, I took pills and I drank a lot. And there was a lot of the whole come to Jesus meetings type shit. And, I don't know that I'm still over that today, but I will say that we're in a much better place. And, the whole thing, this whole city, I love this city, the culture that has become has really just made it all worthwhile. We had to close our doors tomorrow. Like, all right, well, we actually did something, and that was great.
Did something good.
And if we can scrape something out for my kids and their kids and make a legacy here in Texas, well, I don't think there's anything standing in the way of that.
Right.
I don't see why not.
Sure.
But end of the day, we still hold our own dick. Right, Casey Sue? We still hold our own dick.
That's awesome. So, if people want to get more information about Whitmeyer's, where do they go?
Well, you can just come to the shop.
Okay.
Of course, our website, whitmeyers.com, WHITMEYERS.
Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Where are you at?
Yeah, Facebook is probably going to be
the biggest place.
Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, we're on those. TikTok. I don't know. I've removed myself from these things.
Someone else.
We do have people more qualified to answer those kinds of questions in the house tonight.
Okay. All right.
Well,
I'd just like to give you the chance to give the shout out. But yeah, Whitmeyer's, they got some good stuff here. Obviously, you guys have a great history leading up to where you're at. Excellent commitment to what Texas is all about, and that's very exciting.
I'm right.
So if you guys want to get more information about Bourbon Real Talk, you can find us at bourbonrealtalk.com. Show suggestions. We got 3 different content categories there. We got reviews. We've got whiskey education, and then we got the full-length episodes like this. We do have our shop where you can buy our bourbon aroma kits, our sample storage boxes. We've got some other products that are coming out soon. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram /Bourbon Real Talk. You can search for us on YouTube. And if you woke up this morning and you were unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk. Cheers.